the suspension of habeas corpus, et cetera, we'll get into that a little bit later and even in this conversation. I don't take it seriously. I don't think it's really possible. I think that's going to be a bridge too far for them. Now, they may find a way to do it in this government because they have nothing but sort of a sycophantic, yes-infused world of people around them. But even with that, I think suspension of habeas corpus is going to be a tough climb. So I'm going to put it to the side for the moment, even though it would be normally the biggest story that would vault to the top, I should say. But I think this Qatari gift of the 747, it's more than just clickbait. It is absolutely outrageous. And a guy who has run afoul of the emoluments clause in the Constitution, prohibiting contributions from foreign governments, this guy has run afoul of those. I'm talking about Trump, through Trump 1 and now through Trump 2, doing it through the meme coin, doing it through his hotels and his resorts, etc. We've seen all the ways in which foreign governments can money him. But this is just a massive, massive chunk of payoff and bribe. And I'm going to be very curious to see if this washes down. He supposedly, by the way, and then I'll let you speak, Anthony, he supposedly has the blessing of his Attorney General, Pam Bondi, on this, so it's legal.
Well, he has the blessing of Pam Bondi on everything, doesn't he?
Right,
I mean,
exactly.
She really does not waver. There is no independence of the Department of Justice anymore. Those days are over. But of course, they project and they claim that Merrick Garland was the one that wasn't, independent, doing a proper job. Let me tell you something. If Merrick Garland wasn't independent, Trump would be in prison by now. But, he kind of tried to give the impression he wasn't siding with Democrats, I guess. And so therefore, it ended up with him just being a bit of a soft touch. And some have a theory that, the guy deep down is a conservative anyway and didn't really want to see through with any of those things. But to your question, let's go back a little bit. When Trump was president last time, he's always hated these two 747 200 series aircraft, or 100 series. They're really old 747s that are currently Air Force One. Of course, there's two of them in case, one has a problem, they have another one, but also they sometimes fly two around. One is a decoy, various things. Because he's had his own private 757 and he likes the certain level of luxury, and this plane is getting on a bit. And so what he did was, in order to kind of speed up the tender process, which never was a tender process, he always was going to give it to Boeing to recreate the new 747-800 series, which incidentally was a commercial disaster, and they don't really build anymore. They do a freighter version. But he basically said, look, I need a deal. I need a discount because I'm Donald Trump and it's the art of the deal. And so instead of doing the proper thing, which was giving Boeing the job of working with the U.S. military to build from scratch two 747-800 series to a military-grade standard for Air Force One, he found two discarded Russian 747s that were on the field because the Russian airline that Boeing built them for went bust. So he got them cheap. He got them for basically half the price. He thought that was the deal, the art of the deal. Pay cheap, pay twice, because now Boeing have to convert a passenger civilian 747 into a military-grade one. It's impossible. I mean, you can do it, but it's going to end up costing twice as much and take 10 times longer. And so that's where we're at. We're basically in a situation now where he is desperate for the new plane that he ordered, but of course he can't get it because he cheaped out in the first place and didn't let Boeing do their job. And so he loves the performative aspect of all of this. He doesn't care about whether it's up to standard. He just wants his jets. And so in the interim, he's found a workaround.
Right. Although it's not as though he's just renting this car and dropping it at the airport when his business trip is done.
That's
He's
right.
taking it with him.
He gets to keep it. But I'm less concerned about the corruptions aspect of this story because the guy is corrupt, right? That's no big surprise. And he loves, in his 757, he's like 30 years old, and that's ready for the scrap heap anyway. So he sees this as, when I'm not president anymore, I get this beautiful plane. So I don't have a problem with that because Trump is, that's his criminal mind. I have a problem with the fact that that national security is compromised, because this plane has not been built to American military standards. This has been built for the Qataris. This is a completely different aircraft. And so what is Trump going to fly around in it as if it's a kind of interim Air Force One and it not be to the security standards that are required by the US military?
That's exactly what he's going to do.
That's my concern.
No,
I don't know why I'm suddenly concerned for the health of this guy, you know?
Well, it's not even the health. I mean, you can talk about the intelligence failures of this administration already, and this would be exactly another one. So I think you're right to focus on that.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing is the Qataris, they're no friend of the United States. Their friends are in the Middle East. You know, they will say anything and do anything to do deals, of course, and they're very business oriented. But in terms of are they a trustworthy ally, who knows? And the point that I'm really making is they could give him a plane that is bugged, they could give him a plane that is tracked, they could give him a plane that is compromised, and he doesn't really care.
Yeah, I want to play a little bit of what Trump is saying about this. Tony, play a little bit of Trump remarking on this when asked a question about, you know, what is this about? Doesn't this fly in the face of ethics, et cetera? Go ahead.
Mr. President, what do you say to people who view that luxury jet as a personal gift to you? Why not leave it behind?
You're ABC fake news, right?
Why not?
Only ABC. Well, a few of you would. Let me tell you, you should be embarrassed asking that question. They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much. You know, there was an old golfer named Sam Snead. Did you ever hear of him? He won 82 tournaments. He was a great golfer. And he had a motto: when they give you a putt, you say, thank you very much. You pick up your ball and you walk to the next hole. A lot of people are stupid. They say, no, I insist on putting it. And then they putt it and they miss it. And their partner gets angry at them. You know what? Remember that, Sam Snead. When they give you a putt, you pick it up and you walk to the next hole and you say, thank you very much.
Respectfully, Mr. President.
Yeah, so he sees it as, look, it's a gift. Take it and move on. I see I'm not really quite as willing to walk past the ethical violation as you are. I mean, I understand and accept what you're saying and agree completely that this is an administration that is first about grift. It is the first primary directive of this administration is the grift. It's moneying themselves. They were doing it before they were even inaugurated. In fact, using the inauguration itself as a way to grift. Millions and millions and tens of millions of dollars came in from donors, from those who were trying to curry favor with the new administration. But this is a flying piece of grift. And more to your point, when you add the fact that it's not really, I mean, I guess it'll be vetted by DOD for various compromises in security, et cetera, but you're seeing it in the chat. People want me to ask you, don't you think it'll be bugged? Don't you think it will be, from an intelligence standpoint, just a huge mess?
Well, it's all of those things. But also, there's only one of them, right? He's not getting two identical planes as the specification requires for Air Force One. So he clearly is turning the presidency as was into this autocracy that he just basically operates by his own rules. And that means that, you know, that is, I would have said that the rules governing Air Force One and how the president travels are probably the most important national security thing, right? Because he's carrying the nuclear codes and all of that stuff. It's probably like at the very, very top. And that's the bit that he just wants to compromise because he prefers a certain type of leather chair and likes a certain type of interior finish because of course if it's a Middle Eastern plane, it's going to be all gold and all that lovely stuff that he really likes, you know, like Putin's palace. And so this is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with somebody who cares nothing for the Constitution, cares nothing for national security, cares nothing for justice, cares nothing for civil rights, and is entirely corrupt. Everybody can see it. We better get used to it because it ain't changing anytime soon. This is where the United States has gone. And everybody who voted for him, they should have known this in advance because most of us have been shouting about it for a decade. And so, you know, why are we surprised? It's only going to get worse from here. I mean, look at the trajectory of authoritarianism from January to May. The graph goes up. That's what it does. And grabbing people off the streets, arresting the mayor of Newark. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, and then that's just the beginning. I mean, they're
This is what I'm
threatening
saying.
public officials coast to coast. Yes,
Yeah.
of course. Just to round out the plane, and I'll give the press at least credit for this. I guess you can't let this pass without asking about it. I mean, it's a huge story. The Trump administration accepting this plane from the Qatari royal family. It'll be retrofitted and used as Air Force One during the president's second term. When pressed if she, the press secretary for the White House, believed this gift would require something in return, Leavitt said absolutely not, because they know President Trump and they know he only works with the interests of the American people in mind. Yeah, exactly which American people? Who is that? The president said that the Defense Department plans to accept the luxury jet as a gift free of charge. He said that on social media in capital letters, so it must be true. And he said the multi-million-dollar jet will be used on a temporary basis. It's a very public and transparent transaction. I love that the transparency is associated with the fact that there's no way to hide it. You know what I mean? And these same things are happening with his meme coin and the digital currencies that are being traded. Hundreds of millions of dollars being made from trading, both buying his meme coins and also trading them on his platform, that World Liberty platform.
Yeah, and none of it is traceable. This is the other thing about buying crypto, is that it's complete. All the transactions are untraceable, and Trump is making a profit on every transaction, as well as the amount. There's also a transaction fee every time. So he and his family have become enriched to the tune of billions of dollars since he took the presidency. But, you know, he's not taking his salary. So really, we should be very thankful for the fact that he's the only president to not have taken a salary. And thank you, Mr. T. Appreciate that.
It's important that we now move to what's happening with this immigration mess.
Yeah.
So people are scooped up. They are moved into detention facilities. What's now happening in increasing numbers is people are scooped up. They're moved to an initial detention facility. Then they're moved to a different one. Then they're moved to a third one, a fourth one, even a fifth one. They're moved all over the country like whack-a-mole. Lawyers have to try to figure out where their clients are in order to try to get them the due process that we talk about.
Yeah.
So we get to habeas corpus and the fact that all people, not just American citizens, need their moment before a judge for due process. Might that be suspended? I mean, clearly it's been ignored in the case of the initial group that was sent to El Salvador. They were claiming to have deported all of these Venezuelan gang members. Clearly that's not true. It's not true in 3 of them that we know, and probably another 73 beyond that, and maybe more. Who knows? But not saying they're good guys, not saying they shouldn't be deported, but just saying they do get the due process in the immigration courts, which move very rapidly. You know this, Anthony Davis. It moves almost like traffic court. Can we run a little bit of Stephen Miller for Anthony? And this is Stephen Miller responding to the question about suspending habeas corpus, and might that be something that the administration is looking into? And he says, yes, it is. This is the question.
Well, the Constitution is clear, and that, of course, is the supreme law of the land, that the privilege of the writ of habeas corpus can be suspended in a time of invasion. So I would say that's an option we're actively looking at. Look, a lot of it depends on whether the courts do the right thing or not. At the end of the day, Congress passed a body of law known as the Immigration and Nationality Act, which stripped Article 3 courts, that's the judicial branch, of jurisdiction over immigration cases. So Congress actually passed, it's called jurisdiction stripping legislation. It passed a number of laws that say that the Article 3 courts aren't even allowed to be involved in immigration cases. Many of you probably don't know this. I'll give you a good example. Are you familiar with the term temporary protected status, or TPS, right? So by statute, the courts are stripped of jurisdiction from overruling a presidential determination or a secretarial determination on TPS when the Secretary of Homeland Security makes that determination. So when Secretary Noem terminated TPS for the illegals that Biden flew into the country, when courts stepped in, they were violating explicit language that Congress had enacted, saying they have no jurisdiction. So it's not just the courts aren't just at war with the executive branch. The courts are at war, these radical rogue judges, with the legislative branch as well, too. So all of that will inform the choices the president ultimately makes, yes.
Mr. Miller.
So basically what he's tipping is the fact that they'll declare some kind of invasion threat again. That's going to be the flank that they're going to pursue.
Well, apparently we're already under attack by Venezuelan gangs, and that is why we are in this current situation where they are making use of the Alien Enemies Act, and I mean, it's all gibberish. The whole thing is gibberish. You know, this guy is advising the president. He is the senior kind of policy guy. So when the president speaks, it's because Stephen Miller has whispered in his ear. And Stephen Miller clearly is a white supremacist and a xenophobe and somebody who has a completely different view of the world to most of the world. And that is where the president is getting his advice. And you remember the other day when they said to Trump, you know, what about making Stephen Miller your national security advisor? And he was like, oh, well, that would be a demotion, which suggested to me that Stephen Miller really is the guy who's kind of running all the policy for this country. Trump is over it. He doesn't want to really be involved. He has delegated to some very dangerous people like Russell Vogt and, you know, people that are embedded in Project 2025. So none of this comes as a surprise to any of us who talked about Project 2025 3 or 4 years ago, who recognized what their plan was. We just have to acknowledge that this is the way it is now. And I'm done with being shocked and surprised. They will do away with habeas corpus. And as far as I can understand it, unless the Supreme Court, I don't know, has some kind of bypass, you are looking at a very extreme Supreme Court that will side with Trump on pretty much everything. Amy Coney Barrett is the linchpin here because she tends to, I don't know what's happening, some kind of Catholic guilt or something that's getting to her, but she seems to be kind of leaning in with the dissenting liberals on the court a couple of times. But, you know, I just feel like, you know, this is what we warned of. This is the dystopian future that is now our present, and it's not going to change anytime soon. So, of course, immigrants are not going to get due process. And the only way to fight it is in the courts, one case at a time. And, you know, liberal legal cases are winning. Trump is losing in court, but they're trying to run the clock. And so, you know, the more stuff they can stuff into initially 100 days and now beyond is just, again, it's just making it so difficult to wear people down, where people, this is exactly what Hitler did. You know, this is, people get worn down by the dictatorial nature of the regime, and eventually they succumb.
Well, it's interesting that, you know, when you say, of course, this is happening, and of course that is happening, I say, of course, also because we all know what hymnal they're singing from, but I do think it has to be fought at every single turn. I don't think you can just kind of stipulate to the fact like, yeah, they're going to get rid of habeas corpus, and yeah, he's going to be corrupt.
But I'm not being defeatist. Yeah. I'm being realistic. And this is the problem. I don't think people in this country have really heard this type of talk before. You know, there's always got, you know, movies in America get pre-screened to audiences, and they never like it when people die at the end, the lead characters. So they tend to then go back and reshoot the ending of the movie so that it's a happy ending and everyone's happy. Well, I'm terribly sorry. But this is not how it works in the real world. You can't just reshoot the end of this particular sequence. And so there is this, you know, exceptionalism baked into American culture, and it's nobody's fault. But, you know, the US has been very lucky in its short lifespan that it has not been invaded. It's not had any of this, you know, the kind of trials and tribulations that European nations have been through. And that's why the European Union recognizes the threat of fascism and is dealing with it and is doing something about it and is making strides. But here in the US, it's still like it could never happen here, to coin a phrase.
That's absolutely right.
And that's what we're dealing with.
I think that's such a clean summary. I mean, I've said we've just gotten fat and happy. We've gotten complacent, and this fascistic, authoritarian creep was occurring this entire time. Then, of course, the divisive nature of our politics only helped to enable it. But just to round out the situation with the immigration and kind of news of immigration, I believe I don't know how to say her last name, the Tufts University doctoral student, is it Rumesia Ozturk?
Rumeysa Ozturk. Yeah.
Rumeysa Ozturk. She was released from federal custody. This happened Friday after we got off the air. And the judge in Vermont ordered the Trump administration to free her. She was with her lawyer. She spoke before the media. And she was moved to an immigration detention center in Louisiana. We had that story on the show, some weeks ago, which in itself was a kind of cruelty. And there's a trauma that she'll live with, having been innocently pursuing her life as a researcher and then scooped up on the street by these, jackbooted thugs who work for the government now.
And we're seeing this everywhere. It started with Mahmoud Khalil, and, he was of Columbia University, and that seemed pretty shocking. Notice there's always a video camera around to record this stuff. We saw one over the weekend with a mother being ripped from her child in the street and all the neighbors piling in and screaming at the ICE agents. It was the most horrifying and devastating thing to see, and this is going on all the time. And this is our reality now. A lot of these ICE agents are also white supremacists. A lot of law enforcement are white supremacists. It's no coincidence that black people were getting shot by police at the side of the road without a trial. And so, we have to be realistic about what's going on here. This is the result of decades of effort behind the scenes by this MAGA Republican movement. Call it what you will. Call it Project 2025. Call it the former Ku Klux Klan. I don't know who they are. But they all seem to have the same view of America, and that is that America, and I'm going to quote Stephen Miller from the RNC, America is for Americans and Americans only.
Yeah, and then
that is what they want.
Who and what is an American that's the whole game, right, is the interpretive thing.
I mean, did you hear Trump describing this new pilot that he met on Air Force One in the flight deck? He said, he looked at him and he was like, wow, you're perfect. You're like Tom Cruise, but better looking. You're just, and I quote him, a perfect specimen. He was white. He had pearly white teeth. He had a good head of hair. He was tall and strong and handsome. And Trump was describing this and salivating, right? And I was thinking, this is weird, but Trump is obsessed with eugenics and genes and bloodlines, and that is what they want.
It's funny, we have a eugenics professor coming on, I think within the next 10 days or so. It's a really intriguing conversation about just that. I wouldn't be a responsible host if I didn't quickly touch on the China tariffs. I'm going to touch on them with Gary Dietrich coming up in a moment also, but I wanted to get these on-again, off-again tariffs. I wanted to get your thought on it, because on some level, we knew that the tariffs weren't going to continue, and essentially an embargo on Chinese goods. You'd have to drop them, reduce them substantially. Well, that's what's happened. They've been all effectively dropped, it would seem.
Well, it was just a waste of 6 weeks, wasn't it?
And tons of money. I mean, a lot of people lost a lot of money.
Wiped off of the world markets, yeah.
Exactly.
So this is the level of incompetence that we're dealing with. I mean, when Trump stood in the Rose Garden with that sheet of paper with those numbers on it, everybody was like, hang on a second, like, this is a bit weird. And then people were trying to work out the equation. So how did he come to that percentage? He took what they did and this, and then you'd take that away from that and you add that to that. And it was so random and weird. And then, people starting to realize he just doesn't really know what international trade is. He thinks that this kind of trade deficit is because we're buying more than they are, and therefore they're ripping us off. But their economy is a quarter of the size of our economy. They don't have the buying power that we have. So it's equal. He doesn't get it. Look, the interesting twist with this is that Project 2025 believes in free trade. There's nothing in that 900-page document about tariffs. Tariffs comes from Trump and things from like 30 years ago, like Reagan and this whole idea of taking back control, to coin a Brexit phrase. And, he's just living in the past. He doesn't understand how the world works. And so he basically just cost the world $1 trillion through his incompetence and his use of gibberish in place of English. And we're all having to pay the price for it. I mean, 401ks are a perfect example. So, I am not surprised that we're back where we are and claiming that we're going to have a reset with China. China hasn't uttered a word. They haven't spoken. They've literally sat tight-lipped and watched Trump do this to himself. It's embarrassing. It's given world leaders an education in how to handle Trump, which is basically say nothing. Putin's doing it too. Just wait and watch him hang himself.
It is true. I mean, it is true, first, that Chinese negotiators did meet in Geneva with American negotiators, Besant and the rest. But it's also true that on the Russia thing, it appears that we're coming around to the Russia side again. I mean, even more aggressively now. And you're right. There's been no high-profile negotiation that has led to that. It's a high-profile turn that Trump is making on his own, or the administration is making on his own.
But it shows that Project 2025 have sway in the Trump regime. And he went out on his own and did this, a little bit like Gulf of America and, all these kind of, no more paper straws, plastic straws about, like, that's the stuff that Trump is into. It's like marketing and branding. And so they let him do tariffs, and then he screwed it up. And so Project 2025, they believe in free trade. And that's not because they're liberal. It's because that's how you make the most money.
Find Anthony Davis on the Midas Touch Network. Oh, my God. Anthony came here for civilization and found Trump. He must be disappointed, says Harry Magnan. Yeah, well, it's a long haul.
It's still a beautiful country.
It really is.
And the majority of the people here are incredible, and they get it. And, Trump did not win with this huge mandate. Let's just remember this. So only 70-odd million people voted for him. Well, there's 320 million people in this country, so you tell me how that's a majority.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a lot of people disappointed based on those numbers, because this isn't stopping anytime soon. We're just underway. Yeah. We can find you on the Midas Touch Network. Again, tell me exactly when. It's
5 Minute News daily on the 5 Minute News YouTube channel. You can find me on Substack as well, The Anthony Davis.
Look at you,
Blue Sky, The Anthony Davis. That's me. And then on Wednesdays, Uncovered on the Midas Touch Network. Sundays, The Weekend Show on the Midas Touch
Victor
Network.
says MTN is their best show. Uncovered, the best show on the Midas Touch Network. How about that? Anthony Davis, thank you. Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.